Hello YouTube and Patreon, this is Nathan P. Butler, and this is our project update for the month of March 2022. You may have heard of the Ides of March before, like March 15. Maybe you read the Julius Caesar Shakespeare play, perhaps, back in the day. I actually really like the Julius Caesar Shakespeare play. It doesn't hold a candle to Hamlet, and I'm not sure if I prefer it or Macbeth, but definitely one of my top Shakespeare plays. But you may have heard of the Ides of March. I guess you could say this has been the Idols of March. At least in terms of stuff I can give you updates on project-wise, because it has been a crazy busy month work-wise, which has meant from a project standpoint, Patreon has kind of kept going with its regular schedule because it needs to, but everything else has kind of fallen by the wayside while I wait for some free time to actually get other stuff done. The fun stuff to be done. Basically, the short version of why, obviously, I've talked about before about how basically most of the time when it comes to recording anything, it typically is a one day on the weekend kind of thing. That is my one opportunity to get it done. It's my one opportunity to do something without my son in the room, to focus on something else, and so on and so on and so on. And what has happened is, because of some stuff happening within Georgia with the economics curriculum, I just have not been able to give those days over to doing the stuff I'd like to do. I've been having to really focus in on work stuff every single weekend, just about. I was able to spend a weekend my one day on a weekend to record the Patreon Q&A. I'm doing this video. Otherwise, just haven't had a lot of time. I got a quick Q&A video recorded, but other than that, a lot of it's been focused on economics. Basically, the state of Georgia has decided, rightly so, that students really need a lot more personal finance education before they graduate from high school. Like, you take economics, but economics is the social science, the big picture stuff, supply and demand, monetary and fiscal policy, international trade, stuff like that. It's big picture economics. It's not meant to be personal finance. It has some personal finance stuff in it. It touches on a few things, but that's really not what economics has been. And in fact, it used to be more leaning towards personal finance, and as the curriculum was updated over the years, it's moved more and more towards like hard economics rather than personal finance. But that meant that unless you took an elective course called personal financial literacy, you wouldn't get stuff like, here's how to actually fill out a tax form. You get economics telling you what taxes are, and fiscal policy, and progressive, regressive, and so on and so on. But you wouldn't actually know how to deal with taxes when you actually had to pay them. Or here's how to save and invest. But then you wouldn't get anything unless you took personal financial literacy on, like, okay, here's how to balance your bank account. Here's what your pay stub looks like and what all these things mean. All these very practical, real-life skills that just stopped being part of what people think of as economics finally sort of became actual economics, not personal finance. So the idea is, kids need more personal finance before graduation. But instead of it just being, you have to take economics, and now personal financial literacy is now a required course, not an elective, the thought was, there's a little bit of overlap, let's just combine them. So what the state has done is turned economics and personal financial literacy into personal finance and economics. And in doing so, like I said, there was a little bit of overlap, but not much. And there were a few standards removed, or elements of standards removed, but not much. So you combine those two together, and you've got a course now that's supposed to take a semester that's kind of like a semester and a half worth of stuff, at least, crammed into one. And whereas if you're a classroom teacher, you can sort of do this on the fly, right? You know, you prepare for each unit in advance, but maybe you could prepare this unit while you're in the previous unit and kind of work as you go. You're kind of building the plane while you're flying it, as folks are fond of saying apparently now. But that's because you can plan stuff as you go. You don't have to have your entire semester planned from day one in advance. But that's not how it works with online classes. Online classes in the platform, the entire course is ready to go on day one because you put the kids in it, and there's the platform, there's the course. They work their way through it at their own pace. So we are having to sort of create a new economics course to account for the fact that the standards just drastically changed by combining these two courses together, one of which we've never offered before. So basically what I've been focused on for weeks now, and it's getting more intense focusing on it for most of the weekends now, is trying to figure out how on earth we create, for one semester, until a third party creates the official one, for just fall semester, how we create an economics meets personal finance course, a personal finance and economics course for the new curriculum based on what exists rather than having to create everything from scratch, because there is no time to do that. This has to be basically ready to go by the end of May to be ready for fall, which I know sounds weird, but it's just a timing thing. So I've been spending much of my weekends going over our various many resources of financial literacy, like, okay, what fits the standards, what doesn't, what can we use, we'd have to add stuff, what can we use, what would have to be edited. And of course, none of that has assignments with it, it's just lessons and resources on it. So then, okay, where do we need assignments, what assignments do I need to create, and so on. Because I'm basically our economics guy, a lot of this is going to be on me to get it ready to go. Which I can do, certainly. It takes a while, but it's not like it's an incredibly difficult, impossible process or anything. It just takes a long time. And that means sucking away the time that I would normally use for fun stuff on the weekends, so that my weekends basically are pretty much entirely devoted to putting a new curriculum or a new course together. So suffice to say, that is one of the downsides. There's a lot of positives, in fact, mostly positives, from teaching online instead of teaching face-to-face. For example, no fire drills. No, all male personnel, please report to the bus ramp because people are probably about to fight type of announcements or anything, as if somehow I at 5'4", 5'5", am going to do anything if there's a big fight that breaks out. I don't know what I could do except, get my butt kicked or get, thrown across the parking lot. But you don't have to deal with any of that stuff when you're doing online. But it does mean that typically everything needs to be ready to go at the beginning. There is no building the plane as you're flying it type stuff. And that means a lot of front loading, which means the end of one school year oftentimes is a lot of preparation for the summer or the next school year. So that is why I've not been particularly productive on this stuff, because there just has not been the time to do it. I'm hoping that all that stuff, though, will be done by the time spring break is done, or at least most of it, so that once spring break is done, I can actually have weekends back after that, but we shall see. So, that said, like I said, not a lot of stuff coming out. Let's see what has. And that starts with the Patreon. Of course, on Patreon, you have the 2 commentaries and the 1 Q&A every single month, and that is for the different tiers of backers. So let me thank all of you who are backers over there on Patreon. We start with the Travelers Through the Butler Universe. These are the folks that get thanks in videos like these, the $1 tier. Those include David Bittner, John Sullivan, Kai Jacoby, Story Mode, Travis Cook, Justin Richard, Jeremy Goss, Ben Abrams, Michael Torson, Jacob Kapoor, Tony Jenkins, Kevin Kriener, Daniel Marchant, and Austin Pierce. Then, of course, we have the Denizens of the Butlerverse, which is the $5 tier, who also get access to those 2 or more commentaries per month, 2 guaranteed, and then if I have any time to do some extra ones like I'm trying to do soon for Star Wars Voices, I just drop those in there as well for that tier and above. This includes Jeff Rabjohns, Matt DeRocher, with no S. I've been saying it wrong for years after saying it right for years. Somehow my brain went, there's an S on the end that must be pronounced, when it doesn't need to be pronounced. So sorry about that, Matt. I will say it right from now on. Walker Langstrat, Kyle Pellegrini, Joey Zitzman, Stephen Malicia, Robert Medina, Bobby Craig, Jeremiah Mustard, Jaina Hunt, and Aaron Melzak. Then, of course, we have the Nobility of the Butler Universe. These are the $10 tier members who also get that exclusive Q&A every single month. These include Benjamin Handelman, the original Patreon supporter, Andrew Bettis, Sam Howard, Jonathan Confer, who asks a lot of questions in the Q&A, which is cool, Ennis, who also asks a lot of questions in the Q&A, also cool, Matthew Hardesty, Connor Steyerman, Joe Belite, Skytry Pallasmere, if I'm saying that correctly, and newcomer to the Nobility, Fox Pixar Media. No, not Fox, no, not Pixar, someone who is a fan of both. So, that all being said, what has come out since our last update? The answer is not a whole heck of a lot. But with Patreon, at least, it is all required, basically, content creation, so those have maintained despite this being a crazy, crazy busy month. So the last of our project update videos was around February 20th. So the first new release on Patreon was on March 1st. That was the commentary for To Catch a Jedi. And then on March 15th, we had The Wrong Jedi. So those are the 2 concluding episodes out of 4 of the last arc, the Ahsoka arc, so to speak, of Season 5 of The Clone Wars, which means the Clone Wars commentaries are now done with the Cartoon Network era / movie era. All that is left is the Netflix and Disney Plus era, which means the Clone Wars commentary should end sometime in the middle of next year. Kind of glad to finally be able to reach that important milestone here. Now, between them, on March 9, we had the exclusive Q&A for the Nobility of the Butlerniverse. It was one of the longer ones that we've looked at. More questions this time, a couple of different posts from each of the people asking the questions. So if not the longest one, it's certainly one of the longer ones. And this was Q&A number 51 of the series. Now, what's coming from Patreon, of course, we've got Q&A videos every month. I can't tell you the exact date for those. I usually record them the first weekend of the month if I can, and then get them ready and edited over the next few days. We, of course, have commentaries on the 1st and 15th of each month. So April is going to be The Unknown and Conspiracy, which are the first 2 episodes of Clone Wars Season 6, or The Lost Missions, which begin the Order 66 arc. Then on May 1st and May 15th, we have Fugitive and Orders to finish that out. Then the next arc picks up on June 1st with An Old Friend. That's the beginning of the Clovis arc of the Clone Wars. June 15th, The Rise of Clovis. And July 1st, Crisis at the Heart. All of those are recorded, edited, ready to go in the system, ready to launch on those dates. So that doesn't mean that the next time I get a chance to sit down and record, it'll be that Jar Jar-centric arc of the Lost Missions, and then I guess after that is what, Sifo Dyas, and then Yoda doing the whole walkabout type thing. I actually have notes ready to go for all the remaining episodes of Season 6. I just need to sit down and record. Probably looking at 2 different sessions to record those 2 arcs, and then I think that's the end of the season unless my brain is going boop, and I'm forgetting an arc or something somewhere. So yeah, Patreon going smoothly. I do plan on still recording commentaries for Voices in the near future. I need to get a chance to, again, finding time. I need to have the time to sit down and get notes on the different episodes of Voices. Then I can go through and record for Voices. Or I keep saying Voices. Visions. Visions. Star Wars Visions. Well, it didn't sound right in my head. I do plan on doing commentaries for Star Wars Visions once I get a chance to sit down and take notes for it. I kept saying Voices. Maybe it's Other Voices, the old podcast that I did very, very, very briefly alongside Chrono Radio back in the day that's sticking in my head. I said it's been a month. It's definitely been a month. As for YouTube, not really a whole heck of a lot, though a couple of cool things to share about YouTube, albeit not necessarily with new releases. So the only really new release since the last of the project updates was the second From the Star Wars Home Video Library Q&A episode. That was where I asked for questions on the Star Wars Home Video Facebook group, because there just weren't very many on YouTube, and put all those questions together into a Q&A video. I think that actually went very well. It was about a half an hour long episode, released back on March 3rd. But otherwise, no new YouTube content whatsoever. I'd like in the near future to get a chance to, for instance, compare the new and old versions of Dungeon Heroes from Gamelin Games as a video, do something on all the extra add-on items for Tiny Epic Dungeons, because I already looked at the prototype and then the main game, and its expansion, like the finished version of it, stuff like that. And, you know, I've got oddball items from the Star Wars Home Video Library to start sort of digging through and doing notes on to eventually do some episodes on the oddball stuff. I just, like I said, have not had time at all. But we do have a couple things that are kind of cool for YouTube to share here. First off, in the relatively recent past, this channel finally crossed the 6,000 subscriber mark, which on the one hand kind of blows my mind. Didn't realize we would ever have that many interested in this kind of stuff. And second, I know it's relatively small compared to many of the other channels out there, but you think about what this channel is. Aside from me just rambling from time to time on a video like this, or the vlog when those pop up, really the bulk of this channel is from the Star Wars Home Video Library. It is a niche channel in that it is Star Wars primarily, even more niche in that it's collecting mostly, and even more niche because it's home video collecting, which is not a major portion of the Star Wars collecting community. And I don't promote this very much. I mean, I share the videos when they're released on the Star Wars Home Video Facebook group, but by and large, I don't really go anywhere to promote this stuff. I'm not on a podcast to promote it anymore or anything like that. So 6,000 kind of surprises me. Although it does surprise me sometimes what the most watched videos often are, because there's still a lot of views of the old Jedi Challenges or whatever it was called, AR game gameplay from like years ago. And one of the consistently, frequently watched videos is a live stream that I did playing Arizona Sunshine, the zombie game, on PlayStation VR years ago. And that's where I get a lot of comments like, I can't figure out how to change my weapon. What do I do? Hell if I know, I haven't played the game on PlayStation in years. And yet that somehow is consistently one of the most watched videos. It blows my mind why that would be the case. I've actually considered removing some of that stuff to actually kind of drive the focus of the channel, but I figure people find it useful, okay. I just can't be expected to answer technical questions about a video game that I haven't played in years. And I would expect that those who watch something like that would maybe, just maybe, check out the date of the videos. Kind of like when the people, like I'll say something, oh gosh, like I'll say, maybe I do a video in 2016 talking about, or 2017, talking about how there aren't any Star Wars releases yet in 4K. When is that coming? And then somebody might pop on the thing saying, actually, there are some. They were really... Right! Released after the video. Look at the date! Yes, that happens often. Very, very often. People need to pay attention to dates when things are time sensitive. But suffice to say, yeah, we've passed the 6,000 mark. That is really kind of cool, especially for not, promoting it very much. So that is cool, and thanks to all of you who are sticking around and actually, watching stuff. Speaking of watching stuff, though, I have a recommendation for you for someone who is a member of the Star Wars Home Video community and has actually recently done a video review of a Saga on Home Video 2nd edition. I was already watching his stuff when the opportunity permits. He has a whole sort of separate sub-series within his main stuff called Star Wars Saturday Night. So I get a chance to check those out. He's looked at some items like the special Letterboxd Collector's Edition VHS set. He's checked out stuff like the Skywalker Saga 4K / Blu-ray set / digital set, I guess, from the US. But another member of the community who has started to sort of launch into doing YouTube stuff, including on Star Wars Home Video, and that is Anthony Baglieri. If I'm saying your name correctly, his channel, the Collectors Entertainment Network, as he calls it, CEN. Now again, that is the Collectors Entertainment Network, no apostrophe in collectors, so collectors as in plural. And then if you want to check out the video he did on the Saga on Home Video 2nd edition, that review, you can find it in his episode Star Wars Saturday Night number 15, which was released on March 5th, 2022. If you want to just find the channel, just search Collectors Entertainment Network. I will also put a link in the description below, which is one of the few times that I tend to do that. Usually I don't do that. But I'll go ahead and put it in there because I can't find an easy way to put the link into a little subtitle on here. And I do want to be able to point you in the right direction if you want to check out that channel, because he is covering Star Wars Home Video stuff as part of that Star Wars Saturday Night. It's nice to see more people getting into doing that on YouTube, especially from that particular community. Like I mentioned how when I started a Saga on Home Video, part of the reason why that book exists, heck, part of the reason why from the Star Wars Home Video library, the video series exists, is because when I was getting into Star Wars Home Video collecting, I realized there was sort of a dearth of information out there. There was swonvideo.com, not complete, but a great resource at the time. Davis DVD had done something way back in the day with sort of some listings that were helpful, but again, not complete. And that was it. And since then, as the Facebook group has grown, as the YouTube series has grown, as the book has gotten out there, I'd like to think that it had some influence in doing some inspiration, but we are finally seeing more people doing websites based on Star Wars Home Video collecting and YouTube stuff and so on. So it's kind of cool to see that, and Anthony has jumped into the fray relatively recently and did take the time to review a Saga on Home Video 2nd edition. He actually showed 1st edition earlier in the series, but he did a detailed review of the 2nd edition back in Star Wars Saturday Night number 15 earlier this month. So yeah, be sure to check that out if you are curious about a review of the books or seeing a perspective on them beyond mine. I will say I also recently, I did some searching around, saw that review. I was like, I wonder if anybody's ever reviewed my comic, right? The Star Wars Tales comic, Equals and Opposites. And I found one where a woman is reviewing the story, and her story issues with it are about the same as mine, which is just, it's very small, it's very succinct, and they don't really do anything beyond that with it in other stuff because it was just a short Star Wars Tales story. And I almost wanted to share that on here as well, and then she ends it with, and here's where you can illegally download a PDF of it. Never mind, apparently I'm not going to share that. Not that I'm getting any, residual type, royalty type stuff from Marvel now reprinting it digitally or anything like that. But there's a principle to that thing there. As for writing, nothing new. We don't even need a section on that. A Saga on Home Video 2nd edition is out. I haven't touched anything else writing-wise in the last month. Just haven't had the time to even consider doing anything like that. So then the what are you things, the what are you questions. Let's see. So what are you watching? Right now I am getting caught up on some new episodes that were released since the last time I caught up on Law & Order SVU and Law & Order Organized Crime, and I'm stoked to see the original Law & Order is back, so I finally watched the first episode of that. Decidedly more political than I remembered it being, at least overtly in this case. Kind of cool to see certain characters back, including Jamie Ross. I did not expect to come back briefly. I think it was Jamie Ross is her name, from one of the earlier seasons of flagship Law & Order. So watching that, finished up Star Trek Prodigy finally. My wife and I are watching Discovery and Picard, but I think we're like one episode or a season finale behind right now on Discovery. Or an episode behind. Like I said, season finale. Let's see. Then I did finally watch No Way Home again once it was available digitally. Picked it up like immediately and watched it that night right after its midnight release for Star Wars. Yeah, Star Wars No Way Home. Yeah, that's an interesting film. But maybe it's the Infinity stories come together. Spider-Man No Way Home, and I actually found that the ending made a lot more sense to me watching it digitally than when I saw it in the theater, because it hadn't. Well, I would be spoiling the end for those who haven't seen it. Suffice to say, pay attention to the difference between the spell at the beginning and what is being asked for in the spell at the end, and it will make a lot more sense than a lot of folks walked out of the theater thinking, including myself, based on some of the online conversations I've seen. Let's see, what are you reading? I actually just got into a genre I did not expect to ever get into. I need to find the name of the person who wrote it here by pulling up my Kindle app. I never thought I would get into lit RPG, which is sort of often a fantasy-based form of novel that includes a lot of like video game or RPG game like elements in it overtly, like leveling up, skill systems, quests, things like that. I did not expect to ever get into that. I thought that's a really weird concept, but having played a lot of dungeon crawler board games in recent memory, being excited for some other ones that are coming soon in the US, like Bard Sung, and playing a ton of Elden Ring when I get the opportunity, when everybody's asleep, I did finally decide to take a chance on a series that I saw recommended, and I'm really digging it. I think I could use some extra proofreading, because every once in a while you'll see like a missing comma or something like that. But yeah, I'm really actually getting into a series. The author's name is C.M. Carney. It is a series called The Realms, although I think it says Portal Realms when you look at the subtitle thing. But it starts with a book called The Barrow King, and now I'm in book 2, which is The Lost City. And it's basically this guy who is a relatively near future where having like, I guess it'd be like an implant type thing that has sort of a virtual reality personal assistant always with you is sort of the norm. And this company has had this massive MMO that is virtual reality that has been taking the world by storm in sort of its previews, but then for some reason, it's all locked down. And his sister, who works at the company, he's a former like special forces guy, Army Ranger, I believe. But his sister, who works for the company, goes missing after sending him a message about needing his help and needing him to go into the realms to do it. The realms being the MMO itself, which is not actually a virtual reality that is fiction. It's like another dimension. Going there as a player actually interacts with this other dimension. So he kind of gets dropped in as a sort of newbie to anything video game or RPG-wise, and gets dropped into this world and is sort of building as he goes, but he's understanding the world through game stats, which is kind of what it feels like playing a game like Elden Ring. You're sort of understanding the world around you, but that is within the context of all the game stats and game mechanics that you have to learn as you play. So it's really kind of a way of sort of reading this interesting fantasy story, but in a context that is very familiar from that perspective. It's not like anything I've really read before, but then again, like I said, I've not ever read anything lit RPG, and I don't know how representative this is of that genre, but I've been very impressed by Carney's work on this so far, so I'm going to keep, barreling through it. The Lost City is very intriguing at this point. I really enjoyed The Barrow King, reminded me a lot of early days of Skyrim stuff, So pretty stoked to continue with that. So that is what I'm reading at the moment. Yes, I need to get back into picking up more of the Star Wars stuff and finishing like the last book of the Thrawn Ascendancy and so on. But when I am sitting there reading on my Kindle because I can't have the light on, that's what I'm reading on Kindle. I've caught up on all the Star Wars High Republic stuff at this point, finally. Let's see. So what are you watching? What are you reading? What are you playing? Well, I already mentioned video game-wise, playing quite a bit of Elden Ring. I have gone with the build you see online a lot with Elden Ring. I started out as an astrologer, which is like the magic user mage type class. I now have Radahn's armor. I'm wearing Azur's headgear. And I'm using, show up to a boss. Okay, drop Terra Magica on the ground that increases your magic power when you're standing there. Pop the flask, your flask or whatever it is of Wondrous Physic with a magic damage boost and infinite magic for 10 seconds or whatever it is type of ability. Bust out Comet Azure, which is like a flow of energy, and just basically one-shot the boss unless they move, because it doesn't really stagger them very much. So at this point, I just reached the mountaintops of the Giants, for those who are also playing the game, having basically finished everything there is to do in Limgrave, Liurnia, Caelid, Weeping Peninsula, whatever the area is that has like Volcano Manor, Mount, whatever it's called, and the capital, and Lindell, the capital city. So pretty far along in it at this point, because I can actually play that while everybody's asleep, which is nice. Let's see. I actually have Horizon Forbidden West. I've barely played it because I started diving into Elden Ring, but I've got to the point where I think she's about ready to actually head into the Forbidden West, or at least into the no man's land between the not-so-Forbidden East and the Forbidden West. So she's about to sort of leave with the mission or whatever. And then I also have been playing a little bit of that Cyberpunk 2077 when it was released on PS5, but I haven't gotten very far. I started as the street kid. I don't know how much that makes a difference at the beginning, but I've just finished up that early mission where you like get like a dog-looking drone thing. You acquire it from the seller, and that's about it. So playing some. Nothing right now on Switch. Primarily being able to play the PS5 stuff, not on the PS5, but through the PS5 remote play to PC, so at least I get a chance to play. Again, when everybody's asleep. Let's see. Board game-wise, haven't had a chance to really play anything recently. I think the most recent thing that I played was more Tiny Epic Dungeons, but haven't had a chance to really play anything in the last few weeks with that. Then let's see. What else we got? What are you backing? So on Kickstarter right now, I did decide to back Unsettled, by the way, but I didn't go with sleeves. I am backing Mageling Rise of the Ancient Ones, which includes the Rise of the Ancient Ones expansion plus Apotheosis expansion. Really enjoy Mageling. It's a fun little game, especially solo. Really cool game mechanics. It's like a weird mixture of sort of deck building, tableau building, dice placement. Just an interesting mix of mechanics that I really haven't seen anywhere else in this type of combination, which has been really fun. But having already got Mageling itself, now I'm backing that expansion, Rise of the Ancient Ones. It has a few days left on it as of the time that I'm recording this. I am one of the backers of that massive record-breaking Brandon Sanderson books thing. I'm just getting the ebooks of the different releases that he's putting out through that sort of secret projects thing. And then over on GameFound, I'm backing one that I wasn't sure I was going to back initially, which is, I think it's pronounced Tama, but it looks like Tamashi. It's basically like a cyberpunk future game where you sort of send your consciousness into other bodies with different skills as you try to, do these different objectives and so on. It looks really kind of neat. It's by Awaken Realms Light. So Awaken Realms, like behind Nemesis and Tainted Grail and ISS Vanguard, all of which I have, or have coming. But it's not the main Awaken Realms, it's the smaller Awaken Realms who are behind stuff like Siege Storm and Knockdown, which I also have or have on the way. So kind of cool to see that come to fruition. It was originally called Gaijin, but there was a whole issue of that being somewhat pejorative, so they changed the name. It is now Tama, I think is how you pronounce it. And I would say, speaking of Kickstarter, there's actually one that recently got fulfilled. Actually, several have, but one specific one that I wanted to show you here. So back in 2016, while we were in the process of buying our house, there was a Kickstarter going on that I had to be very careful about backing, because any purchases beyond a certain amount, which is a very ridiculously small amount, they said could put in jeopardy your ability to get the house and that sort of thing. So repeatedly I was messaging back and forth with one of the creators to try to make sure I could pull this off without screwing anything up. I had to wait, for like a later round of a pledge to be available. But it was a pledge for a new graphic novel called Hexer Dusk, which I think I've shown here in an update. It was created by John Ostrander and Jan Duursema, the same team behind Star Wars Legacy and Dawn of the Jedi and so on. But Star Wars Legacy, which of course featured Cade Skywalker, after whom our son is named, Cade. And basically, along with being able to get the graphic novel signed and everything, what we did was a thing that let basically it was supposed to be me as a character in the story. But eventually when, she asked, hey, give us a reference picture to use, she actually offered out of nowhere, hey, how about we do you and your son? Because we're friends on Facebook. Well, you and your son in the comic. So we got a chance to see that. But along with that, I think I showed you that before, but along with that was the ability to get a personalized, one-of-a-kind sketch, essentially of you in that universe. And she went ahead and did it with me and my son using one of those reference images. So just recently, finally, and it's going to go up on my wall somewhere, this came. This is me and Cade, basically as characters in the Hexer Dusk universe, with the bot there with us. Notice there, they don't do the whole glasses thing, so the character as presented in the different, whether in the comic or here, has the goggle things down here. So yeah, I thought that was really, really cool. One-of-a-kind art from Jan Duursema to go in my office or go in our house somewhere to go along with that. We actually already have in here, you can't see it because it's up on the wall over here, I have the Legacy print that Jan did for Star Wars Celebration 6 that is signed as well up on the wall. And up here, on top of the shelves, which you can't see, is the comic pack of Cade Skywalker and Darth Talon from, I think it's Darth Talon, from, yeah, it is, from Star Wars Legacy number 2 up there, so that eventually Cade can see where his name came from. And either be really excited or be like, really? Really, Daddy? Really? We shall see when the time comes. So yeah, backed a lot of Kickstarters over the years, late pledged even more. I want to say I have about 30 that are still outstanding, many of which are kind of flowing in right now, kind of fast and furious, because I backed them all kind of around the same time, and now they're all starting to come in. Haven't backed a ton recently, but yeah, Tama and Mageling Rise of the Ancient Ones are the ones right now, along with the Brandon Sanderson thing, but that's just going to be one of those fire and forget, backed it, want the ebooks, when the ebooks come, just, yeah, send them my way kind of thing, without the kind of excitement a lot of times that the board game Kickstarters and whatnot tend to have for me. So with that, we will wrap up this project update. Like I said, not a whole lot to share. Bits and pieces of context, which hopefully is interesting for those who follow my stuff here. I will say, I guess the last thing to mention is that I have not made a decision. I know that the last update had a lot of information about what might happen with the Patreon going forward. If you're curious about that, see the last of the project update videos, but I have not made a decision on that at all yet. So there's really nothing to share on that yet. I've got some time to decide whether the Patreon continues after the Clone Wars commentaries end, and in what form it continues and all that kind of stuff. It's just not something I've really had the time to delve too much into just yet, and I'm getting feedback as we go from like members of the nobility and such to try to give me ideas of where to go next with that. So when I know something, when I have some insight to share, I'll share it. I just don't have any at this point, too bogged down in other stuff. So thank you all for your interest in the projects. Hopefully we'll have a more productive month, if not next month, than the month after, once a lot of the economics course creation stuff gets done on my end, and I am sort of freed from having to work on work stuff for most of the weekends. But it's either that or go crazy during the week, and I'd rather do that and just get it done on the weekend when the time permits, instead of being crazed during the work days, because that's not good for me or my son, who's with me all day. So thank you all for your interest. I appreciate it, and I will catch you all in a month.